Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Security and Sandwiches. We're glad you're able to join us this time around. My name is Adam Winterton, and I'll be conducting today's session, which we are broadcasting from Stone Security's Global Technology Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, we will be learning more about some of the features found in LenelS2's NetBox platform. Before we begin, though, let's review a few housekeeping items. Following today's session, you'll receive a survey to the email address you registered with for today's event on Eventbrite. For those who submit surveys back to us, we will select one to receive a Stone Security swag pack, and we'll do that raffle style. Next, if you have any questions throughout this session, please drop them into the chat. If applicable, I'll try and answer them as we go, but we'll also allocate some time at the end to go over any questions you may have or that I may not have addressed. Recordings of these sessions are also posted to our YouTube channel in case you need to go back and review any of the content. While there also, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so that you can be informed when new posts are available. And we've got some new content coming, which we hope to deliver at a more consistent pace, which we hope will be meaningful and helpful to you and your work to take advantage of the power and capacity of your LenelS2 and Milestone systems. All right. So if I could get a thumbs up if you guys can see my screen, just to double check. Thank you, Kimberly. Excellent. All right, well, let's get rolling then. So we are working today in NetBox, as we already reviewed. Today specifically, we're going to be looking at time specs and holidays, events and alarms, threat levels, and audit logs. And then we'll be going over, if there's anything else along the way that we need to cover or review, we'll see what we have time for. I'm already signed into my NetBox system, and it's browser-based, as we've covered previously. So any browser that you have on your computer should work, although I wouldn't recommend using Internet Explorer since it's been discontinued. But the rest are fully functional. I'm already logged in. Right now, we're looking at just my home page, which is our monitoring desktop. And we've got our activity log here in the list. And so there's a lot in there right now. I've been playing, yesterday and this morning, trying to just make sure everything's working the right way to show you. But let's get started with reviewing holidays and time specs. So all of these settings are found over in our configuration tab. And then clear down at the bottom, there is a time specs and holidays icon. Looks like a clock. We're going to actually start with holidays, and I kind of like to do things in reverse order. And so in that reverse order, we're actually going to start with our holiday group names. Holidays are grouped by what we could call a category. So these can be unique and specific to you and your organization. What I've got in here, though, is just federal holidays, any other company closures. You could have another holiday that could be, maybe we'll call it closure due to maintenance. A lot of options on what you can name and call these. So as you name them, once you get them happy and all set, then you'll just hit save. All right, that's saved. Now let's jump over to holidays, which is where we kind of get into the nitty-gritty to start with. So you can see I've already got two here in my list. I've got a Christmas holiday and I have an Independence Day holiday. And let's go ahead and add a new one. So we just click the new button. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call this Adam's birthday, because I feel like Stone Security should be closed on my birthday. Not really. And we're going to say that this is a company closure. And we're going to say that that is going to be on, we'll say March 12th. So we'll jump to, actually, that won't happen until next year. We'll go March 12th. We want it to start on the 12th. And we can specify a specific end time or close time on it if we want. But the easiest thing is actually just to grab, for example, the next day, because the time is part of the spec on these holidays. Oops, I did not jump forward to 8 March. So here we go. March 12th is on a Wednesday, so we'll say Thursday morning at midnight is when that will end. So now we have our closure. We've assigned the group that that holiday applies to, and we'll hit save. So here we've got it in our list. And we'll review some of the other ones as well. So for example, here's Christmas. Christmas, I just put in some random dates from the day before Christmas, 2 days before Christmas to the day after Christmas. This actually has us coming back on the 26th, literally the day after Christmas. That's not very kind, so maybe we'll say we come back on the Friday. And I have that assigned to 2 different holiday groups, federal holidays and company closures. So you can have that multi-group assignment there if you want. And then Independence Day, July 4th, really straightforward, ends the morning of July 5th. Midnight to midnight is what we're doing here. And same thing, federal holidays and company closures. All right, we'll hit close on that one. So that is the really simple, straightforward process of creating the holidays. Now, the probably more complicated part is what do we do with those and how do we apply them? So we're going to jump over now to our time specs. Inside of our time specs, you generally have got some pre-created, always and never are kind of defaults in the system. Always is literally, this is valid or access granted, you could think of it that way, during every day of the week and every holiday. And you'll notice that our days of the week are checked. So on Sunday, we'd have access. On Monday, we'd have access. Same thing on the holidays. Think of it in that same context. We check the box to grant access during that period. So federal holidays, all the holidays, the all doors, the always time spec has access. Lovely thing about S2 NetBox is that we can see below where we have the used by. This is a really handy little thing that pops up on most pages. And it tells us where this time spec or whatever we're looking at is being used within our system. And we can see that right now it's being used by some of our access levels, some of our portals, and also some of our events. All right, let's look at another one. So here's business hours. Business hours, pretty standard operating procedure, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Now you will probably notice pretty quickly that I did not put in 5 p.m., which would be 1700 hours. Instead, I did 1659 because we want that to track through the whole minute and then end at the end of that minute. And so right at 5 o'clock is when this time period would end. If we did specify 1700 hours, then what we're going to get is this time period will be valid all the way through 5 o'clock and 30 seconds and 45 seconds and 59 seconds. So you'd almost get to exactly to 5:01. And so we just shorten that by a minute. And that gets us through the full portion of that minute. Okay, business hours. We're open Monday through Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I check those boxes. Business hours. Do I want my business hours to encompass any of my holidays? Unchecked means that these will not be valid or open on these days. So even though I have Monday checked, if a federal holiday falls on a Monday, then the holiday overrides the Monday with this unchecked. Once I check it, now we're basically saying, hey, just as though I would be giving access to somebody using this time spec on a Monday. I also want to give them access during federal holidays or company closures. So in this instance, we want to keep those unchecked. We'll hit save. You can also take multiple time specs. So for example, I have a weekday after hours AM and a weekday after hours PM and a weekend. And we can use time spec groups to merge and combine multiple time specs into a single entity. So here I have a time spec group, which is just called after hours. And with that, it includes my weekday after hours AM, my weekday after hours PM, and my weekends. And what we get out of that is a single time spec that encompasses all of those three combined. All right. Now, where do we use this? First, we're going to start and we're going to look at access levels. So we'll go to access control, access levels, and we'll start with the all doors always, one of those default groups that we have. So all doors always, we're using the reader group, which contains all doors. My time spec is always, but you see we have the other time specs and our time spec group called after hours. And so in this instance, we just have our time spec all doors always. Now let's create a new time spec. We're going to call this one, what should we call this one? We will call this one an access level. We need an access level that will be a new employee. Actually, we'll go a little easier. We'll just call this technicians. All right, what reader or reader groups do we want to leverage? So in this instance, I'm going to say we want to use all doors, maybe except the cage, make it a little different. And what time spec do we want? We want our time spec to be, let's say, after hours. This reader group, this access level will only work after hours. Kind of a weird group, but maybe we've got a night shift or maybe it's a custodial crew. And actually, let's do that. Custodial. We'll just pretend that our custodial crew is contracted to come after hours. And we don't want them coming during the day. It's a night cleaning crew. And we can hit save. So now we have an access level tied to our time spec that we have specified. Now this after hours, if we go back to our time specs, we're going to review something. So back a page, time specs and holidays, time specs. There is no after hours here. It ties to the group. So after hours group is these three time specs. So let's go back to the time specs. We'll start with after hours AM, no holiday access. After hours PM, no holiday access. Weekends, no holiday access. So in this instance where maybe it's an after hours cleaning crew, maybe we want them to be able to come in during company closures, then we would hit save, check the box there, and save, and check the box there for company closures, and save. So now, during our company closures holidays, we would be allowing this group that we established to come in and clean the building. So there's our custodial group, after hours, and so on. Excellent. Okay, so where else can we use our time specs? We can use them in unlock schedules. And there's a couple places to do this. We're going to start with access control and portal groups. Now, in my system right now that we're looking at, I only have 2 doors. The 2 doors are also office doors. 3 doors, my apologies. I've got 3 doors. These 3 doors, 2 of them are office doors, and 1 of them is a secure cage in the warehouse. So of these 2 doors that are in this portal group, I've got admin door and lab door. And I want these doors to unlock during my business hours. And so here in my unlock time spec, we have the selection for never. I don't ever want this to unlock during any kind of time spec. Always require cards to get through. Or I could say always, which would kind of defeat the purpose of having access control on a door because the door would now always be unlocked. Or we can say only open after hours. In this instance, the most logical thing is during business hours, I want these to be unlocked. Hit save to apply. And there we go. Now we can verify what's going on with those doors. We can go to our portal status and we can see that our GTC office admin door is in an extended unlock. Same thing with the lab door, extended unlock. If we go back, access control, portal groups, office doors. If we set this to never, hit save. We'll see how long this takes to update here in a moment. Let's go back, portal status, and there we go. Those two doors are no longer in an extended unlock. They are now ready, locked, requiring a card and valid credentials to get through that. So let me revert that back. So we want to go access control, portal groups, office doors, change that back to business hours, and hit save. Now, while we're here, we also have this first in unlock rule. And by default, it says not applicable. If we jump over to this, it's a link, and that link is taking us to our system rules. Our system rules are underneath site settings and system rules. Takes us to the same place. And what we can do is we can say first in unlock. So we're going to give it a name, first in unlock. You could tie it to first in unlock, all admin level and above, or something like that. Something that gives us a little more description on maybe who this is permitted to use, who is in this group, who's permitted to do this or whatever. Portal group unlock requires a valid access of. These are our access levels that we created. So what access level do I want to require in order for this first card unlock to work? Maybe I set it to my all doors always, which would be more along my admin group can get anywhere in the building. If you set it to maybe we want to let a lower group come in and only during business hours, toggle that to an unlock status. And then same settings on the relock. We can specify who we want to have access to relock it at any point. So we will say all doors always on both of those, at least for this instance. And then this is a nice feature. Let's say you come in and you toggle something unlocked, right? At what point do we want that to reset back to its scheduled defaults? And in this instance, we can say, hey, I want that to default back. We'll say 5 p.m. We'll do 1659. Or you can say never. And that can default back then to whatever the schedule is at that point. So 1659 and OK and save. Now, if we go back to our portal groups here, so we'll go back, access control, portal groups, office doors. Now that we have that rule created, we would have to select that rule. So unlock time spec, business hours, when first in unlock rule. The name of that rule that we created is satisfied. So now let's look if what our portal status is showing. Portal status, it's both showing ready. They're both locked. Let me go badge on one and see if we can get that to toggle to extended unlock. All right, so there it is now showing extended unlock. And if we go to our monitoring desktop page, look at our activity log, and we see access granted and unlock at the GTC office lab door. So it behaved just exactly as we wanted. All right, let's see. There's a question here. If you use that portal status page to either lock or unlock using the lock symbol, does that automatically reset after a time? Great question. My understanding is that when you come to the portal status page or anywhere that you see these action icons, if I momentarily unlock a door, that is literally just going to be a momentary, whatever 5 or 10 seconds that door is programmed for, and then it will revert back to its locked state. If I click on our padlock for unlock portal, it's going to hold that unlocked, and I believe it should hold that unlocked until a schedule or some other action is going to trigger it to change. So if I have an unlock schedule, then at 5 o'clock where it's supposed to relock, then at 5 o'clock it would revert back and lock. But if I don't have any other kind of trigger or event that's telling that lock to change, it will hold this unlock state for as long as it stays and nobody's reverted it back or changed it. There has to be some activity, some action that's going to trigger that back to go to some other state, to change that state. So to answer your question, there is not a default. This, my action of setting this to locked or unlocked is going to expire after 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 60 minutes. All right, so if we're moving on, we do have the edit schedule, which is a function that would allow us to override that schedule. So now that I've got, and we'll use the lab door because we know that one was on the unlock schedule and we had the valid card access granted, which has now triggered the unlock to initiate. So if I need to override that temporarily, we can actually come in. Let's say we're going to take an early lunch, or, we all worked really hard and had a very productive day. 4 o'clock comes around and we want to take off early, but the door's not scheduled to lock till 5. What we can actually do is we can come in and we can edit the schedule. And this is going to create a schedule override, or an override of whatever behavior is happening or controlling our system at that point. So I can say, I want the system to lock because my doors are currently unlocked. And I want it to start now at a time or in a number of hours or minutes. In this instance, I want to say at a time. Maybe we're going to leave at 4, which is going to be 1600 hours. If I wanted to lock right at 4, I'm going to dial that back to 1659. Hit OK. And when do I want that to end? My end time, it's supposed to relock at 5. So I believe we're safe just saying, I want it to relock. We'll just say anytime after 5. And we can give it a comment, leaving early for the day because we are awesome. And I'm going to hit submit. Okay, so this is one location at which you can do this. So this is on the portal status, and we can see that action is now scheduled, and we see the details of that. We can come in if we wanted to. We can expand our details. We can come in back to our icon, and it's going to list that there. And if we wanted to get rid of it, we can select it and delete it. We can do additional if we want. We're going to leave it for now. So we can do this from the portal status page. We can also do this from the monitoring desktop. So here's our monitoring desktop under monitor. And we have those same icons, those same controls. So let's say the secure cage. Maybe we're going to be in there for the next hour and moving in and out. I need to open it up maybe for some employees who don't normally have access to come in. We're going to do an inventory, knock it all out, get it done really fast. So in that instance, I'm going to come in. I'm going to do that same schedule icon. We're going to add a new one. And we're going to say, I want the system to unlock. And at that system time, we're going to say start in 30 minutes. End time, I want it to end after 1 hour. And we're going to call this warehouse inventory. And actually, just for kicks, let's say we start that in 2 minutes. So we want it to unlock in 2 minutes, and after an hour, we want it to relock. Click OK, and we'll click OK again. We can always go back and see warehouse secure cage schedule. We have a scheduled action to unlock, the details, the comment. All right, we can also do this from, and real quick, if we go to portal status, here's our secure cage, bottom row. It is currently locked, ready for a card to be presented to it, and we have that schedule. So we'll check back on that in a moment. All right, that same thing we can also do from the widget desktop. Oop, that scaled on my screen different. So on the widget desktop, it's the same control if you have that added to your page. We reviewed creating these in our last NetBox session, but same behavior, same look, everything else. Okay, there's one more place that is actually probably my favorite location to do this at. It does require you have access permissions to the administration section, but that is under schedule action. And the reason I love this one is because we get a list and a graphical view of what is happening. So in this instance, here was our office lab door, leaving early because we were awesome. We wanted it to lock starting at 3:59. Here is our warehouse secure cage where we want it to unlock starting at 11 and then going to noon. All right. From here, we can also create our own. So if we wanted to say office admin door, or if we have an existing one, like we'll say the lab door, we'll do a second one on the lab door. Come on. There we go. We select the lab door. This will show us the elements that are part of that door. It's just a portal that we're working with directly, so there's nothing else in it except for the, well, it's saying it belongs to the office doors group. That's what that one says in that context. We can click the plus button and we can do a new one. Or what we can do is say, hey, maybe this one's next week. And next week, I actually want to open early on Monday. We're going to open it, we'll say from 6 to 8. We'll open it early at 6. And I like this one because, one, you have the calendar view, and you can also just click and drag on the calendar to draw that block. And we're going to say unlock early for team breakfast. And I can hit OK. The coloring is coded, and so it tells us what those color codes are. We've got group time specs. That's our light green. We've got a dark green, which is our unlock override, and a lock override. So if I wanted to say, hey, on Wednesday, I don't want you to lock. I don't want you to unlock at all. We're going to say lock, and it's going to be for that whole day. Closed for cleaning. Hit OK, and there we've got our lock override. So this is really nice because we do get that comprehensive view of all the different scheduled actions happening in correlation to any time spec actions that we have applied to either the reader groups, or whatever it might be. And we have that for portals, inputs, outputs, input groups, outputs, inputs themselves, portal groups, and elevators. So if I wanted to modify a whole selection of doors, we would do portal groups. Here's my office doors. Clicking that will tell me what's in that portal group. I've got a group called office doors. It's got just the 2 office doors in it. And we can say, hey, on those 2 office doors, we want to unlock all the office doors. And we'll say on a Saturday. So Saturday, we'll do this upcoming Saturday. We can put it in manually entry, or we can just do the easy button and say, draw it on the calendar. We want to unlock for weekend event, and click OK. And it is that nice and straightforward. All right. So if we are moving down the line here, let's come back to our monitoring and portal status and our secure cage. Looks like I might have made an error because it did not unlock on time. We can actually go check what I did. So it said 11, unlock. I thought I did the in. Maybe I didn't, or maybe I didn't save it on that round, or maybe I said in an hour. So in, we'll do 1 minute. 1 minute. And after 1 hour, submit. All right. So we have that scheduled. And we could wait ourselves 20 seconds and watch. Maybe we'll come back in a minute and see what that is. Okay, the next thing we're going to start to go over while we wait for this to toggle to the unlock state, to extended unlocked, is we're going to start going over events and alarms and how you might use them. One common way is there was our extended unlock toggle change. That came from our event. All right. Okay, so let's shift over to events and alarms. So for that, we're going to go to configuration, alarms. We've got a lot of options here, but the main one we're looking for is this events tab. Under our events, you can see I've already got one here, door forced open. If we review what this one is, door forced open, give it a description, a door was forced open. A short message, a door was forced open without the proper credentials. And then instructions on what an operator maybe should do to review and verify that this alarm requires further action or can be closed out. In this instance, the system is reporting that a door was forced open. Dispatch a security officer to verify the door is secure. Subsequently, I want you to review CCTV footage to identify who forced the door open. Events can be tied to a time spec. Maybe you aren't too concerned about a door being forced open during business hours. So we could say, I want this to be enabled only in my after hours group. And we can give it a priority of how this would compare to other events that are happening. And then is there a camera associated with this event? I don't have cameras pulled into my NetBox system, so those I'll show as none right now. For our demonstration purposes, we're going to say door forced, and we're going to do always. Okay, alarm mode. Do these activations, do these events trigger an alarm? Yes, no. So here, activations do not display any alarms. Multiple activations by the same trigger display a single alarm. So if I have one event, I'll get one alarm. If I have 5 events, I'll have one alarm. Or do I want multiple activations to display multiple alarms? I've got one event, I've got one alarm, or I've got 5 events, I've got 5 alarms. And then do I want to enforce an escalation policy on that workflow? In this instance, I'm just going to say multiple activations by the same trigger display a single alarm. I don't want to spam maybe the operator with a lot of alarms popping up. In my application, just the one alarm would be sufficient. What do we want required for acknowledgements? Do we want to require them? Maybe we'll say yes in this instance. To require a duty log entry, we'll say yes. Do we want to allow clear actions? And do we want to allow the clear action to be set while the alarm is still active or not? Is my door still showing forced open? Or do I want to force the event, my forced open, to be resolved before the alarm can be cleared. We'll actually look at what this looks like in an actual programming. So I'll leave those checked. Okay, and then what do we actually want to happen? What are the actions that we want? Here I just have a log event. So we called it log event, save to activity log, priority 10 medium, threat level group not applicable, and this event is enabled. But we could add additional events, maybe on an maybe on a door forced outside of business hours, so after hours. Maybe we want that to trigger and activate an output. So we have a audible siren alarm going off. Maybe we want that to send an email to notify an administrator or a security team that there has been a door forced after hours when we wouldn't expect anybody to even be in the building. Specify the rest of the properties relating to that action, and then hit save. And that would add that to the list. Okay, notification. Do I want sounds? This ties to the notification that plays for the user who's logged in with the web interface. Do I want that to play a sound when that alarm comes in? In this instance, I don't. And triggered by. So this is the triggers. It's just that used by place. So here it's being used by my Office Lab Door portal. So we'll go over to the portals and now look. Let me hit save on that. And if we go to our portals, access control, portals, here's my portals as defined. And we want to look at the Lab Door. And if I scroll down to the very bottom, we have our system-wide events. So we have local to node and system-wide. Local to node is how do I want any of the hardware on this controller or on this board to respond when this event happens? Do I want a lock to do something? Do I want to change the behavior of any of my local hardware? In this instance, I don't. In this instance, I just want here's my door forced. It is enabled. And when I have a door forced on this portal, what do I want to happen? I want my door forced open event to trigger and kick that off. If we were to create a door held open, we would specify that here. Invalid access, an unlock. I'm not familiar with too many people who have a rule on an unlock. Usually that's a behavior that somebody manually sets but you could tie an event to that. Same thing on valid access or double card presentation. We'll create a held one here in a moment. Let me hit save and let's go back and create a door held open. So if we go to our alarms events and we're going to add an event, we're going to call this door held open event. We can give it a description. Door was held open, but shouldn't be. Same thing, operator message, operator short message, operator long message. How does this relate to a time spec? We'll say always. How does this relate in priority to other alarms or events happening? We'll say a held open is maybe a little bit lower priority. We'll say a 15 as compared to a door forced open. And I want multiple activations by the same to just do a single alarm. We'll leave the default log entry. I'm not going to require acknowledgments on this one, and we'll see how that compares to the other one. Hit save. The event has been updated. So we have the event in our system now, but now we need to apply that event to whatever we want. Access control, portals. In this instance, I'm going to just apply it straight to the portal. Down to the very bottom, door held open. Here's our door held open event. Save, and there we go. So if I come into now my monitoring desktop, let me cancel out this earlier one. Yes, I want to clear that event. And so we'll watch the activity log, and we're going to watch the events up here at the top. So I'm going to go toggle that door. I'm going to go force my door open. And we're going to see here in a moment if this works. I'm trying to remember if I set a masking on my door forced open. I know the held open should work. We'll see that status here in a moment as well. Although those are all in an extended unlock. So an extended unlock is not going to show any kind of a forced. So let me do lab door, and we're going to edit the schedule. We got a lot of things that we put in there. The one active right now, we'll just start clearing those out so that we don't have any interactions at all. That cleared out. The door schedule is still saying that, so I'm going to lock it. It's showing shunted open right now. That will change to held here in a moment. And if I go back to my monitoring desktop, so we saw that change to now it's showing held. So here in monitoring desktop where we can see our events, we should be able to see our door held open event, priority 15, the timestamp. I click on it or double click on it. I didn't require acknowledgement on that one, but let's see, door held open event. If I double click down here in the activity log, I do have the ability to add in my duty log if I want. I don't have any commands available because I didn't require acknowledgement. It's just going to show in the list. Let me see if I can get that to show forced open now. All right, there's our door forced open. So the event was a door forced open, a door was forced open without the proper credentials. And here we have the commands. So we did require details be entered. Well, sorry, here's our operator long message. And we required acknowledgement, so we can acknowledge it with a duty entry. It is still in a forced open state. So here's our acknowledgement, and we'll say forced for testing system. And we'll hit save. And that has now been acknowledged. It's still in here, so it's not cleared yet, but it has been acknowledged. And if I close the door, once that issue has been resolved, then the door clears, the event clears, and it no longer shows there. All right. So these events can be applied in a number of different places. Typically, they get applied directly to the door. Let's see if we can find some of the other places real quick. Access control. If we go to portal groups, do we have any events tied to portal groups? We do not, but we do have threat levels. So keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that. If we look under reader groups also do not have any events. You can tie them to inputs as well. So if you had like a panic button set up, then you would set up an event on the activation of that input. I want that to be this panic alarm. Next up is threat levels. And then we'll move on to the audit logs after that. Actually, I'm going to rearrange things a little bit here just for time. And let's jump to audit logs. So audit logs are found under administration, reports, and history, and audit trail. Sorry, I said audit logs. I meant audit trail. Audit trail, just to differentiate what that is compared to some of the other reports, audit trail is a report. Well, let's just look at it actually. Changes in master partition. We'll run that report now. So here we have the report from just now, and we'll open that up in an HTML. Okay, this may seem like a lot of maybe overwhelming information, but what we have is this is a log of everything that a user has done within the software. We deleted a scheduled action. We deleted another scheduled action. We created a new event. We modified an event. So this is showing us what was modified. So for example, here we have we modified a scheduled action. We added an end time. So insert means add. We added an end time, end date and time. And here's the value for that. And so if you ever have a situation where something changed in your system and you're not sure what, I know what changed, I just don't know who did it, right? This is a great way to go back and find that. So let's create a new one. New report. Here we've got a new report information. We can scope this to different partitions. We can scope it to a configuration type item. So if we want to look at something changed with my access levels, we can run a report based on our access levels, access level groups, inputs, outputs, portals. We have modified our portals. So let's look at that. We'll add this portal changes. We'll say that time period. Yep, we'll leave the default time range, just the last 15 days. And if you have partitions, we can say all or just the master partition. Maximum number of records, you can schedule it to recur on a month, on a regular basis if you want. In this instance, we're just going to hit save, change portal changes. We're going to run the report. And there it is. If we view it, we don't get any information. I have done something wrong. Changed by. We shouldn't need to specify that because we're leaving it unfiltered. Portals. Maybe the changes I made on the portal did not. Big, long list of changes. We should get some results off that. Let me see. All right, well, maybe we'll look at a different thing then instead of portals. What else have we played with today? We did create some time specs. Did we create one? Time spec group. Let's see if we get anything out of time specs. It's still got the wrong name on it. We'll run it again, though, see if we get any different results. There's the new one, 1051, HTML. Okay, so we did modify some time specs. And we modified the name. Let's see here. So the user, who did it, the data, time spec, the field, name, and the original value and the new value. So NC, no change, just tells us that maybe we clicked in that box but didn't actually make any change. All right. So it's not a very complicated tool, but it is a great one, a very useful one if you're trying to just backtrack and figure out what happened. Maybe you run a report just to be preemptive in keeping an eye on what is happening or what is changing, things like that. All right. So what we're going to do now, excellent question. So the question is I don't have an audit trail folder in my history tab. Audit trail is a license add-on. So it's not part of the default license, but it is a free license to add. So if that's something that you would like to add to your system, reach out to your account rep and see if they can get that added. Or reach out to the support team and they can do that as well. Before we kick down into the threat levels, there's a question that says, since you force locked your lab door portal, when you force unlock the portal, will it follow the time spec set for your business hours? Or do you have to schedule a new action for it to unlock again? The way I understand it, speaking generally, because there are differences between whether it is S2 node hardware or whether it is Mercury hardware. So for the specifics on that, I would recommend reaching out to one of our support engineers to have them speak and answer that question specifically to your system. But the way that I understand it is if you have a scheduled unlock and you create an override, and if that override let's say you've got a scheduled unlock, and then we'll go with the unlock from 8 to 5. Okay. If you then have a override on that where instead of unlocking, we're going to say lock at 10, but I want it to stay locked for the rest of the day. If you take that unlock, because that lock override has two sides to it, right? It's got a lock and then it's got a return to the unlock state. When it gets to the end of that time period, it will revert back to, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. If your end time is during your normal unlock period, then it's going to revert back to an unlock state because that's what the next natural state is for that system. If your override extends past your normal lock time, so if it's, say you set it for 5:30 and then normally your doors relock at 5, it should still revert back to its lock state. But again, there may be some variation there between NetBox, the S2 node hardware, and the Mercury hardware. So for a specific answer to that question for your system, just reach out to your support tech on that and make sure that I am not misdirecting you anyway. Because the last thing we want is for a door to be unlocked when it should be locked, right? Okay, we're going to jump over to the threat levels. Now, I am going to warn you, this is not going to be a deep dive threat level. I did anticipate to do that. That was my plan. The more I worked on prepping for this, the more I'm like, there are just so many scenarios, and threat levels can be kind of confusing. I mean, I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy, but threat levels were, aspects of it can be backwards to some people's brains, like mine. So we're going to look at it in a simplistic form. And my recommendation is when you are modifying or creating threat levels, reach out to your support team for help in getting that done. Because there are also differences, again, back to the S2 node hardware versus the Mercury hardware. There are some differences to be aware of in how the hardware is going to respond and behave in that threat level. So with that, we're going to start looking at it. Okay, threat levels are found under the configuration menu. And then we're going to jump down to threat levels. And then from there, we're going to jump over to definitions. And this is where we define what our threat level is in terms of a name and a color and a description. So I have created 3. I have a normal operating mode, and I have one for limited access and restricted access. Now, this can be kind of confusing because terms like limited and restricted can mean different things depending on your perspective. Normal operating mode, normally this is called default. I didn't like the default. That was ambiguous to me, so I changed it to normal operating mode. The limited access, let me click it here, and I added a description. This is what I wanted limited access to do. I want to override unlock schedules and remove general access. Not remove all access, but only general access. I want its color code to be yellow, and you can see automatically where we've got that being used. And let's look at restricted access. So to me, restricted access, this is my most aggressive escalation. This is, I want to lock down all card access and schedules, with one exception. Those who are in the all doors always, I don't want them to be restricted from access. And we're going to show you, we're going to walk through these and I'll show you how they were done. Color, I set this one to red because that in my mind is the more critical escalation there. Okay, so we've got the 3 with the color codes. Menu order. So this is taking our 3 access levels, our 3 threat levels, and we can rearrange how they appear in our list. Okay, where do these appear in the list? Let's look at that real quick. So a couple different places. One place is the monitoring desktop, which may or may not be your home page. We have a threat level section up in the top right. We can click it, and here we have normal operating, limited, restricted access. We see the descriptions that we provided, and we see the color coding that we created for that. All right, another place to see it. This one's maybe a little quicker to get to. Top right corner, 3-bar menu item, threat level. Pops up a window, normal operating mode, limited access, restricted access. Now, there's these 2 other boxes down here. Applies to location. Where am I applying this threat level to? My master location. Okay. Am I also applying this to sub-locations? When you're working with a system that is split into partitions and split into separately locations and sub-locations, each partition's threat levels are going to run independent. And each location or sub-locations partitions can, each sub-locations threat levels can run independent. Now, if I apply this to my master, that could apply just to the top level parent master, or I can say also trickle downstream to anything that is below that in my architecture. One great example of this is if I have a school district, maybe my master location is the school district headquarters, and maybe my sub-locations are each of the individual schools. Well, maybe I don't want to lock down all of the schools at once because we only have a threat at one school. Maybe I don't want to lock down, maybe I only want to lock down the school district, the district offices. So in this instance, I would not want to apply to sublocations. I don't have sublocations created in this system currently. If I did, it would just be a list of school 1, school 2, school 3, and I could select a specific school, and then we would only lock down that school as opposed to locking down every school. So we have selections and options to pick where we apply this threat level to. All right. Now, before we start actually playing with the threat level, I want to look at the threat level group. Actually, before we do that, we're going to go to settings. You can require a password, and I believe the default setting is this is enabled. To modify, to change from one threat level to the next, you can require a password to be entered. Okay. If I hit save and we go here to threat level, you see now it's prompting me for my password in order to change and save. So it won't let me hit OK without entering my password. So that is one method of controlling who can just come up and start playing with threat levels. For demos, I'm going to just turn that off though. I don't want to require a password to have to type that in every time we toggle a threat level. The other way that threat levels can be modified or escalated up or down is with badging a specific credential. I've seen some organizations create a badge, a red badge, and a yellow badge, and a green badge. And depending on which badge is presented to a reader is going to control how that threat level is being applied or responding in the system. So in my case, where we have just the 3 tiers, I would say green might be my normal operating mode. We could do a yellow that matches my limited access with the color yellow, and I could do red, which matches my restricted access. And just by simply scanning a badge on a reader, we can control our threat levels that way. Maybe for fun, we'll take our normal operating mode and we'll give it a green color because green is good. And now if I look at my threat level list, now we've got our green, yellow, and red, the 3 threat levels there that are all happy. Okay. So what are we controlling? Well, first, before we do that, we need to look at our level groups. Threat level groups. Now, this section to me is where things start to feel a little backwards until you get into actually applying this programming to different devices. And what we have in these groups, we have, and here's these, I created these myself. And so again, it can be really custom or complex for your own situation. Here's my normal operating mode. So my normal operating mode group only contains my normal operating mode threat level. My limited access group only it contains both my normal and my limited. And my restricted contains all three. Now, this feels kind of backwards. In my mind, what I want to do is say normal operating is everything and restricted is nothing or just only restricted. But as we look at how this behaves, it's going to start to make more sense. Probably the easiest way to do this is we're going to look at a time spec. We already looked at our time spec, and let me, before we do, actually see if we need to clear out all of our modifications here so that things go back to a normal state, just for ease of keeping track of what's happening. Okay, and we'll get rid of this one. Okay, so we have two doors right now in an extended unlock. Let's toggle that one back. Now it's ready, and okay. So what we have here, let's go to our access control and not access control, time specs. Here's my time spec. So we have our business hours. Okay, this business hours is 8 to 5. And now let's go over to access levels and portal groups. This is just to summarize what we're looking at. So here's my office doors portal group that has my business hours unlock spec. And for this, I'm actually going to take off the first cardinal lock rule just so that we can see that better without somebody having to go badge on it. All right. So what I should have now is when I go back to portal status, I have two doors in extended unlock. This is because of the unlock schedule tied to those doors from 8 to 5. Okay. Now let's go back to portal status. Let's go back to my portal groups. Portal groups. There we go. Okay. Here we have a threat level group. Now, the group, that's important. This is not my limited access threat level. This is not my normal operating mode threat level. And I failed to name restricted access group with the group terminology on it. These are groups, not the access level. So when do I want this to be valid? I want this time spec applied to this collection of readers, of portals. I want it to be valid during my normal operating mode. Okay, so now let's go look at our time spec. So we're going to come back to here, and we're going to do threat levels and threat level groups. So only in my normal operating mode is here. This normal operating mode is not valid during limited or restricted. And just for consistency, so that we don't get ourselves confused, I'm going to change that and add the group term, the term to the end of it so we can see that. Okay, so only in normal operating mode is normal operating mode permitted. So when we use, anywhere we use that normal operating mode group, that's only going to be enabled during this threat level selection, which is good for right now because that's the one we're in. So to showcase that, let's go back to our portal status. Okay, we are currently in normal operating. It's showing a threat level right now because technically I'm escalated to green, which is a threat level. If I take off that color that we added there, then this would disappear and clear up. But it's a great visual for now. Okay, threat level. Just note, we do have these two doors in extended unlocked, and we're going to say limited access. So this is supposed to, if we've programmed things correctly, override unlock schedules. Click OK, and our threat level has now changed to limited access, and these doors are no longer in an extended unlock. Okay, let's just test it, see if we did things right. We're going to escalate it one more time. We'll go up to restricted access, hit OK. Our threat level is now escalated to restricted access, and we still do not have an extended unlock. So just to go back and capture that in case we missed it. On my portal group for these two doors where I specified my valid threat level group, I selected normal operating mode group. What threat levels are part of this group? Let's go check. So threat levels, threat level groups, normal operating mode group. My only valid threat level is normal operating mode. So if I'm in anything but normal operating mode, that time spec will not work. Okay, now there was another portion of that. Let's check our definition. So for limited access, and we're going to roll back so that I don't lock people out of the building too much. Okay, so if we roll back now, limited access, override unlock schedules, we did that, and remove general access. I don't want to remove all access. I just want to remove some access. All right, so we're talking about access. That must mean we need to look at access levels. Let's go check. Access control, access levels, and let's look at all doors except cage. So my all doors always, let's start there. All doors always. Threat level group, select. Now, in some places, you'll see where it says not applicable. In other places, you'll see where it says select as the default option, and I've got my groups here. If I select a group, then it's gonna track with that group. If I don't want this access level affected by threat levels, I just want to leave it blank. Okay, and we'll test that. So we're gonna play with my credential. My credentials are part of. So I have this all doors always, and I have another credential here with me that is part of the all doors except cage. So all doors except cage. Let's save those changes. Make sure I didn't change anything. Okay, so all doors except cage. In this instance, I only want this access to have up to limited. I don't want restricted. So limited access group. Okay, we'll hit save. Now let's look at our limited access group and see what we have in there just for review. Threat level groups, limited access group has both normal operating and limited access. So my threat level can be in either of these two, and that will make a valid entry. Okay, let's test this. So let's go back to our portal status. Actually, we've seen that happen. Let's go back. Let's look at our monitoring desktop, because what we want to look at is these activity logs. All right, threat level. We're currently normal operating mode. And just to show and prove, I'm going to go scan 2 badges. We will see door forced open. We'll ignore those because we have that created in there. But let me grab this credential and my credential, and I'll get them both. And we'll see both valid access at the default at my normal operating threat level. All right, now in this instance, I didn't necessarily need to badge because my portal is currently unlocked because of my schedule. But you can see access granted for Adam Winterton office at the lab door. Access granted for Bruce Banner at the lab door. Okay. Now we're going to do that same thing, but we're going to escalate our threat level. So this is going to override our unlock schedules and remove general access. So let's see. We're going to hit OK. So we have our threat level set, limited access at master location by, it tells us who did it. And so we see the relock of those 2 doors that were previously controlled by a time spec. So now we're going to take those same 2 credentials and badge at that door again. Okay. So here, again, we see that we have access granted for both of those. But that's what we wanted. That was our intended behavior. Because we are at our limited access threat level, the group that this Bruce Banner was in, the access level that Bruce Banner had here, had that limited as part of its group. So we're going to escalate one more time. And if I do threat levels, restricted access, what we should see is we should see that Bruce Banner now gets denied, but I still have access. All right. And that's the behavior we got. So again, ignore the door forced opens, but here's our access denied by threat level for Bruce Banner. And we have the access granted for Adam. Okay, so threat levels in its most simple form is it's a singular point at which we can control in a global or individual or regional or group method how our system is going to behave and respond in different scenarios. We've seen people set up a threat level for things that are not even like necessarily threats. One example of that, if you are in a northern region where snow is an issue, then you have snow days, or at least the chance of a snow day. A snow day for you might simply be something like, we're not going to take away people's access. If they come into the office, we still want them to be able to come into the office, but we're not going to allow any schedules to unlock our doors. We want to make sure that our building is secure in the event that nobody is there. So you could have a snow day access level or a snow day threat level. You could have a threat level that locks down just individual facilities. You could have a threat level that takes away a access level maybe for a event group, a weekend event group or something like that. So threat levels are intended to change the default behavior of your system to something else. So if there's specific questions you have about that, or hey, can we make our threat level do this or that, or we want to try this scenario, definitely reach out to your support engineers who help with your systems. These can be complicated. And again, there's also some differences in how S2 node hardware works versus Mercury hardware in terms of threat levels. So definitely reach out. We're happy to help. We'll have those discussions with you, outline what the features are, what you're looking for, the behavior that you want, and then we can start helping with getting that implemented. So that's all I had for threat levels to show you. Again, I didn't want to get too deep, because any deeper than this and it really starts to get complicated and we start to run into maybe some of those differences between NetBox hardware and Mercury hardware. But are there any questions that we can answer in the time that we have left? While people are typing, because if you've got questions, it takes a minute to type them out. I want to just highlight next month's security and sandwiches. So next month, we will be covering features from LenelS2's OnGuard platform. And that will be what we do for June. For those of you with milestone systems, we'll be covering milestone topics again in July. So take a look at our website, at what those events are with the details and dates, and get registered for them. It's pretty easy to find them on our website. I'll pull that up real quick. But just stonesecurity.net/events, or there's a link at the top of the page for events. And with that, you'll see all of our events. So today, actually happening also at the same time, today we have a campus safety and Security Summit in Southern California. Here's our live stream security and sandwiches for today. Next month is June 20th. Next month will be again On Guard. And once we get down to, so each office, there's a live stream, and each office has a link as well if you want to come attend in person. If you attend in person, we'll give you some lunch. So take advantage of that. Plus, if you're there in person, it's easier to grab one of our support engineers to say, hey, tell me more about this, or I've got this other question. I've got this really weird, situation. Maybe you can help me with it. They are more than happy to assist in that. And then once we get to July, so July 18th, this will be our milestone discussion, and we've got those scheduled throughout the rest of the year as well. So take a look and see what might be of interest to you, and we hope to see you there. Also, I mentioned our YouTube channel. So Stone Security has a YouTube channel. Come subscribe, and you can come back and watch these later. For example, here's our Security and Sandwiches playlist. Here is so far January, February, March, and April. We'll be getting this session posted up in the next few days, and you can go and review those there. So if there's something that you saw here, or you had another question and you want to go back and review it, maybe you want to try and do some of this on your own system, these are great resources for you to go and kind of get a step-by-step. The milestone one we did last month was a lot of fun, and we really kind of dug into some weeds on some of the features there. So definitely take a look if you've got a milestone system that you're using. And subscribe so that you can get notified when new stuff comes out. So really easy to find. Just search YouTube for Stone Security, and you'll find it. It's usually the first thing that comes up on the list. Right there, Stone Security. Excellent. Okay, well, that's all that I had planned for you today. I'll get you back a little bit more of your time, which we can always all use, a little extra time. But I appreciate you coming and attending, and hopefully this was informative for you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Have a good day.